The annual conservative political conference known as CPAC is currently underway in Texas, and it's going to be rocking all weekend long, everyone. Get excited. Now, if you're not familiar with CPAC, it is one of the largest and most influential right-wing conferences in the country, and it's typically a pretty good indicator of the current direction of the Republican Party and the broader American conservative movement in the moment. Which means that these days it's basically a 4-day-long MAGA rager, filled with long-winded dear leader-like speeches praising Donald Trump and discussions about the right's latest culture war issues and targets. Now, just to give you a sense of the vibes I'm talking about, here are the names of just a few of the sessions this year. Defeating communism, and we mean it. Don't Sharia my Texas. We worked on that one. Give them a button. Cigars, steaks, and ivermectin, a Maha survival guide. The president will sue you now, how the legacy media was defeated, which literally was immediately, and I love this part, and with zero hint of irony, followed by the censorship industrial complex.
The image of total control that the White House has been projecting is cracking. Not in one place, not from one direction, everywhere at once. Republican senators are defying their own president on the Senate floor.
In the United States Senate, 5 Republican senators rebelled against Donald Trump and voted with the Democrats to advance a war powers resolution that would require congressional approval before Donald Trump can expand any military action in Venezuela. And Donald Trump responded the only way he knows how. On social media, Donald Trump said Republicans should be ashamed of the senators that just voted with Democrats and attempted to take away our power to fight and defend the United States of America. Susan Collins, Lisa Murkowski, Rand Paul, Josh Hawley, and Todd Young should never be elected to office again. That is something no other president ever says about members of his own party who cast a vote that the president doesn't like. That's a Trump thing. Republican Senator Rand Paul of Kentucky said this.
If a Congress actually had gumption or a Congress actually had wherewithal, a Congress could check a president. That's the way our founding fathers intended it to be.
Democrats are walking out of the State of the Union on national television. Tens of thousands of Americans across all 50 states coordinated a mass walkout on the anniversary of Trump's inauguration. And the Supreme Court, including 3 justices Trump himself appointed, just struck down the legal theory underpinning his governing strategy.
Front Park in front of the county administration building is relatively quiet now, but earlier on Tuesday it was filled here on Pacific Highway with protesters with signs and chanting against the President Trump and his administration's policies.
Hey Trump, can you hear it? Can you hear my spirit?
I'm very concerned about what's going on in Minnesota.
You don't have much choice other than to find whatever available time you have and at least do something to make your voice heard.
Can you hear my spirit?
I'm honored that we have so many people here today.
Hundreds of San Diegans gathering and rallying for a common cause on Tuesday afternoon. Protesting against President Donald Trump and his administration as it completes its first year of Trump's second term.
We can't stop. He's not going to stop. And the people who are supporting him are not going to stop. So we don't have a choice. We have to be.
Taken separately, each of these is a notable political story. Taken together, they tell a very different story. One about a presidency confronting organized, multi-front, bipartisan resistance that is more coordinated and more consequential than anything Trump faced in his first term. Let me walk you through what's actually happening, because the full picture is far more significant than any single headline suggests. And the contrast between what's happening inside the halls of power and what's being projected at events like CPAC this weekend in Texas could not be sharper. While Republican senators are breaking with the president on the Senate floor, CPAC is running sessions with titles like Defeating Communism, and We Mean It, Don't Sharia my Texas, and Cigars, Steaks, and Ivermectin, a MAGA survival guide. One session celebrated defeating the legacy media, which was followed immediately, with zero hint of irony, by a panel on the censorship industrial complex. Pardoned Proud Boys leader Enrique Tarrio was spotted mingling with administration officials and posing for thumbs-up photographs. This is the conservative movement's flagship event, and it's operating in a parallel universe from the political reality unfolding in the Senate chamber and in the streets. The gap between the CPAC fantasy and the actual political landscape tells you something important about how fragile the narrative of total control really is. By the way, please leave your questions or comments in the comment section. I will answer each one individually as time permits. Also, I would be very happy if you liked the video and subscribed to my channel. Now, let's continue. Start with the Republican Senate defections, because these are the most immediately consequential development in this entire landscape. 5 Republican senators, Susan Collins, Lisa Murkowski, Rand Paul, Josh Hawley, and Todd Young, voted with Democrats to advance a war powers resolution requiring congressional approval before Trump can expand military action in Venezuela or Greenland. The final tally was 52 to 47. A majority of the United States Senate, including members of his own party, declared that the commander-in-chief needs legislative restraint on his war powers. Trump's reaction was immediate and revealing. He posted that Republicans should be ashamed of those senators, said they voted to take away our power to fight and defend the United States, and declared that all 5 should never be elected to office again. No other president in modern history has publicly called for the political destruction of members of his own party over a single vote. That is not the posture of a leader firmly in command. That is the behavior of someone who feels the ground shifting beneath him. And the war powers vote wasn't an isolated incident. Late last year, 4 Republican senators, Collins, Murkowski, McConnell, and Paul, crossed Trump again, joining Democrats to reject his emergency tariff scheme by a vote of 51 to 47. That marked the 3rd time in a single week that Republicans had partnered with Democrats to push back against Trump's tariff agenda. 3 separate votes in 7 days. Republican senators repeatedly rejecting their own president on what he considers his signature economic weapon. This unfolded during the same period the Supreme Court was striking down those very tariffs in its 6-3 ruling. Trump found himself under simultaneous assault on the trade front from both the judicial branch and his own party in the upper chamber. That combination represents a genuine multi-directional erosion of his capacity to act without facing consequences. Think about what this means for the political dynamics going forward. The candidate who built his entire identity around absolute dominance and unquestioning party loyalty is watching Republican senators repeatedly team up with Democrats to block his agenda, multiple times within a single week, without suffering the political annihilation he threatens. The fact that Collins, Murkowski, McConnell, and Paul have crossed him repeatedly and remain standing is itself a signal to every other Republican senator calculating whether total allegiance to Trump is the safest political position for their own re-election. A limit exists beneath which Trump's capacity to command automatic compliance in the Senate does not extend. That limit is narrow and applies only to specific overreaches, but it exists, and its existence will matter increasingly as the midterms approach. Now the State of the Union. The traditional evening when a president stands before a joint session of Congress and broadcasts strength to a nationwide audience became something very different this year. Senator Mark Warner walked out of the chamber and told cameras he could not remain seated while falsehoods poured from the podium. Other Democrats raised signs in silent protest. Some sat motionless, refusing even the polite applause that decorum normally demands. Several skipped the proceedings entirely. The visual narrative playing out on national television, vacant chairs, handmade signs, a senator striding out of the chamber, rows of stony faces refusing to perform respect, told a story that no words from the podium could erase. Democrats have concluded that normalized participation in Trump's presidential pageantry constitutes a form of complicity, so they chose disruption. Visible, camera-ready, nationally televised disruption. And it worked as a communication strategy, because the images of Democratic protest traveled more widely on social media after the address than any of Trump's prepared remarks. You cannot fully command the visual narrative of your own State of the Union when the opposition is making its defiance that explicit. Then there's the Free America walkout. On the anniversary of Trump's second inauguration, citizens in all 50 states left their workplaces and schools at 2 in the afternoon in a synchronized act of mass civil defiance. The organizers framed it as a protest against ICE raids, the deployment of National Guard forces in American communities, and systematic attacks on LGBTQ rights and immigrant populations. Their statement pledged to become ungovernable. That language carries a specific political meaning. It signals a commitment to sustained disruptive resistance patterned on historical civil disobedience movements. Organizers who deploy that kind of framing are telling both their participants and the administration that this is not a standalone event. It's the opening phase of a sustained campaign. The level of coordination required to execute a truly nationwide walkout, all 50 states, a single synchronized time, on a symbolically loaded date, doesn't materialize by accident. It requires months of network building, communication infrastructure, and strategic planning. What's developing now appears fundamentally different from the initial resistance wave of Trump's first term, which was largely reactive and struggled to translate street energy into sustained organization. This is planned, coordinated, and explicitly designed to build toward electoral infrastructure. Here's the connection that binds all of this together: the Senate defections, the State of the Union protests, the mass walkout, the court defeats. These are not separate, disconnected incidents. They constitute a developing ecosystem of opposition that feeds on itself. When Republican senators see tens of thousands of people walking out across 50 states, it changes their political calculus about the risk of breaking with Trump. When Democratic lawmakers watch their colleagues walk out of the State of the Union and generate massive media engagement, it emboldens more visible resistance. When grassroots organizers see Republican senators voting against Trump on war powers and tariffs, it validates the argument that sustained pressure produces tangible results. Each element reinforces the others in a cycle that is becoming more organized and more politically effective with each passing month. The administration's response has followed a predictable pattern: fury at disloyal Republicans, dismissiveness toward the protests, attacks on the credibility of organizers. What the administration has conspicuously not done is make any strategic adjustment to reduce the pressure it keeps generating. No outreach to senators who broke ranks. No acknowledgement that the scale of street-level protest represents an authentic political problem. The instinct is to double down, attack, and project confidence. That instinct might have worked when the resistance was fragmented. But the opposition in this second term is more synchronized, manifests in more locations simultaneously, and is producing measurable political outcomes in the form of Senate votes that go against the president. Dismissing all of it with outrage is not a strategy, it's a reflex. And what all of this is gradually eroding is the single most valuable political asset Trump has ever possessed: the aura of invincibility. The perception that opposing him is futile because he invariably wins, invariably survives, invariably emerges stronger. That aura is what keeps Republican senators aligned, even when they privately disagree. It's what suppresses opposition organizing, because why invest resources in fighting someone who seems unbeatable? Every crack in that aura, every Republican who votes against him without suffering destruction, every mass protest demonstrating that opposition is alive, every court ruling rejecting his agenda makes it incrementally easier for the next person to take the next step. The aura doesn't shatter in a single dramatic moment. It erodes through accumulation. And that erosion is exactly what's happening right now across multiple fronts simultaneously. The fundamental reality is this: Trump entered the second term projecting total dominance. What is actually occurring is that on every front, the dominance is proving less than absolute. Republican senators are voting against him. Democrats are walking out of his speeches on live television. Citizens in every state are organizing coordinated resistance on his own symbolic dates. Courts at every level are striking down his most aggressive actions. None of these individually ends his presidency. But together, they narrate the story of a presidency confronting resistance that is bipartisan, organized, and increasingly sophisticated. And heading into the midterms, both the resistance and the cracks it's producing will matter enormously.